The whole idea behind cloud computing was really appealing, right? Instant scale, lower costs, basically no infrastructure hassle. And for years, well, that promise seemed to hold up pretty well. But now, today, a lot of the big mature companies are finding this expensive catch, a catch that's actually making them rethink their whole IT strategy, sparking a pretty big reversal.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we're going to dive deep into today. It's something called cloud repatriation,
Oh, ooh.
which is basically the deliberate move of taking specific applications, specific workloads, and the data that goes with them. Back from the public cloud, onto infrastructure the company actually owns or controls, like on-prem servers or maybe a private data center.
And this isn't just a few companies here and there. We're seeing real momentum, right? Especially over the last, 3 years. I saw this Barclays survey. It said something like 83% of CIOs plan to repatriate some workloads in 2024. That's a huge jump from just 43% back in 2020.
Okay.
Well, that's not a minor tweak, is it? It really signals a shift towards a more hybrid approach.
That's a really important point to make, that some workloads part. We need to be clear with you, the listener. This isn't about everyone suddenly abandoning the cloud altogether. Not at all. Public cloud is still, the go-to for startups, for anything needing massive elasticity. But what we are seeing is this: selective optimization. Companies are looking hard at their systems. They're saying, okay, this database here, it's predictable. This caching system, pretty stable. Does it really need the premium price tag of the cloud anymore? So they keep the cloud for some things, but move the steady stuff back.
Okay, that makes sense. But if overall cloud spending is still climbing globally, why are these huge companies going through the hassle and, frankly, the cost of this U-turn? Let's unpack the money side of it first.
Right. The big driver, economically speaking, is often framed by this idea called the trillion-dollar paradox. Andreessen Horowitz coined that term. And the paradox is basically this: you're smart, really smart, to start in the cloud. No big upfront hardware costs. You get speed, agility, perfect for getting going.
Yeah.
But once your company hits a certain scale, becomes more predictable, say after 3, maybe 5 years, staying fully in the cloud can actually start hurting your bottom line.
So it's like the cloud's volume discounts just don't scale up enough once you become the volume yourself.
Exactly. You put it perfectly. When you're small, you benefit from the hyperscalers' massive infrastructure. But once you are massive, you're essentially paying retail for wholesale capacity you might not even need all the time. We've seen cases where, for mature software companies, public cloud costs creep up to like 30, 40, even 50% of their cost of revenue. That really eats into margins.
And it's not just the baseline cost, is it? We hear all the time about nasty surprises, like unexpected usage spikes, those really pricey managed services, and data egress fees.
Egress fees, yes.
Yeah.
That's probably the sharpest point of vendor lock-in, financially speaking. These are the charges you pay just to move your own data out of the cloud provider's system. That's like an exit tax.
Wow.
Yeah, it's deliberately high. It forces you to factor the cost of leaving into any repatriation plan. It's a big barrier. And, IDC found almost half of cloud buyers overspent their budgets in 2023. So predicting these costs, still a huge challenge.
Okay, let's make this concrete. There's the example of 37 Signals, right? The company behind Basecamp, and hey, they were pretty public about their cloud exit.
Yes, they were. And the results were, well, pretty dramatic. They moved their main stable workloads off the public cloud, put them onto their own servers in a co-location facility, and cut their monthly cloud bill by about 60%, which worked out to roughly $1 million a year saved.
$1 million a year.
$1 million a year. And they projected saving like 8 figures over 5 years. They basically proved that for their kind of steady workloads, buying and running their own modern hardware, even with depreciation, was way cheaper than paying the ongoing cloud OpEx.
And it's not just smaller, agile tech firms. I remember reading about Geico, the insurance giant. Their story was kind of a warning. After pouring money into the cloud for a decade, their costs apparently jumped to 2.5 times what they'd projected.
That's right. And even worse for them, the reliability actually decreased. They found their systems were becoming, quote, more unreliable.
Ouch.
Yeah, which understandably prompted them to pull some key systems back onto infrastructure they owned and managed directly.
So the lesson seems to be, if your workload is predictable, stable, the cloud's elasticity premium just becomes wasted money.
Pretty much. Cloud economics kind of punish predictability. If you can forecast your needs and you amortize the cost of owning servers over, say, 3 to 5 years, those core databases, caches, predictable jobs, they'll often run cheaper and maybe even faster on your own gear.
Okay, but let's play devil's advocate here for a second. Repatriation isn't free, right? You're swapping that cloud bill, the OpEx, for upfront CapEx buying servers. Plus, you've got new ongoing costs. Hardware refreshes every few years, power, cooling, and critically, you need skilled people, engineers, to actually run the stuff in-house again. Doesn't that eat into the savings?
That is absolutely the crucial counterpoint. You're absolutely right. You swap one kind of cost, the variable cloud bill, for fixed hardware costs and the operational overhead, including talent. It's not a simple swap. That saving from leaving the cloud is only real if you budget accurately for all those new internal costs, which is precisely why this isn't a panic move, but more about careful, disciplined portfolio management. And cost is just one piece of that puzzle, which brings us neatly to the other big drivers, things like control, security, and compliance.
Right. Because when companies pull workloads back, it's not always just about the dollars and cents. It's often about wanting more direct control, isn't it? Especially over sensitive data. Because at the end of the day, the CIO is on the hook for security, not the cloud provider.
This is exactly the ultimate responsibility for security obligations, for meeting regulations. It always rests with the company, not the vendor. So, bringing key data back under your own roof, under your direct administrative control, that gives a lot of executives peace of mind.
And that ties into the vendor lock-in issue too, doesn't it? It's not just about getting hit with surprise fees.
No, it goes deeper. Lock-in happens when you rely heavily on the provider's specific proprietary tools or managed services, things that just don't have an equivalent outside their ecosystem. Then, if that provider decides to, say, jack up the price, or worse, discontinue a service you depend on, well, you don't have much leverage, do you? You're kind of stuck.
And this whole control issue gets magnified even more when you look globally with all the different regulations around data, right? Data sovereignty is a huge topic now.
Oh, absolutely huge. And it's getting more complex. If you look at Europe, for instance, GDPR was really just the start. The big thing driving conversations now, especially in finance, is DORA. That's the Digital Operational Resilience Act. It's live now, January 2025 deadline, fully in effect. And DORA really changes the calculation for using the cloud for critical functions.
How so? What's DORA asking for that's different?
Well, DORA requires that financial firms don't just have an exit plan on paper for their critical cloud services. They need to prove they've actually rehearsed that exit plan.
Rehearsed it, like actually practiced moving services off the cloud provider.
Exactly. Regulators want to see documented proof that you can maintain your critical business functions during a major outage at the provider, or if you had to move quickly due to, say, sanctions or some other disruption.
Wow, okay. So it's not enough to just have a break glass in case of emergency plan tucked away in a drawer. You need to show you can actually execute it without crippling the business. That really shifts the dynamic, doesn't it? From just consuming cloud services to actively managing, well, reversibility.
Precisely. Technical reversibility. And it's not just Europe. You see similar pressures globally. China has very strict rules about data localization and moving data across borders. The Middle East also often has clear requirements for data to reside within the country. So these regional laws are forcing companies to think much harder about where a workload should physically run, based on jurisdiction and control, not just cost or performance.
Okay, so this really reinforces the idea that it's not a simple cloud versus on-prem decision anymore. It's about the CIO carefully placing each workload in the right place, considering cost, control, performance, and now, increasingly, legal and regulatory factors. That hybrid reality seems undeniable.
Undeniable. And let's be clear again, public cloud spending isn't going down. Gartner predicts it'll hit, what, over $720 billion in 2025?
Wow.
Yeah, so the cloud is still growing massively. Repatriation is more like a course correction.
Yeah.
It's acknowledging that maybe the initial assumption that everything belongs in the public cloud was a bit too simplistic for large, mature organizations.
Which brings us to the practicalities. If you're going to do this selective optimization, or even just want the option, you absolutely need a plan, right? A cloud exit strategy, or sometimes called reverse migration. Seems like having that plan, even if you never use it, gives you some leverage with your cloud provider too, when it comes time to negotiate contracts.
That's a very savvy point. Absolutely. But the really smart companies go further. They're actively engineering for portability now to protect their future choices. This means deliberately choosing technologies that aren't tied to one specific cloud vendor. So for data, you see wide use of open formats like Apache Parquet or Avro. Your data is readable anywhere, regardless of the underlying storage.
And for the applications themselves, what makes them portable?
Containerization is key, specifically using an orchestrator like Kubernetes. Kubernetes lets you package your applications and run them consistently, whether they're in AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, or critically on your own servers back on premise. That consistency makes moving them actually feasible, not just a theoretical possibility.
Okay, so you've designed for portability, but now you actually decide to move an application stack back. The big challenge then becomes getting it set up on your own hardware quickly and reliably, right? Doing that manually for complex systems seems, well, slow, error-prone, and likely to blow your repatriation budget and timeline out of the water.
Exactly right. Manual provisioning is a non-starter for repatriation at any real scale. This is where automation becomes absolutely critical. You need to embrace infrastructure as code, or IAC, principles. You define your infrastructure servers, networks, configurations, and code, and then use tools to automatically build it. You can't treat the infrastructure you bring back like some handcrafted, unique system. It has to be automated.
But the automation needs to be sophisticated, doesn't it? It's not like just restoring a virtual machine snapshot from the cloud. You need something that reliably builds a clean system every time, the right OS version, all the application components, the latest patches, security settings, and ideally it brings over user settings and data too, so it's ready to go.
Precisely. You need automated provisioning that guarantees a clean, consistent, secure build from the ground up. And speed is vital. Think about that DORA requirement for rehearsed exits. Good automation lets you rebuild and deploy even complex application environments in minutes, not days or weeks. That minimizes downtime, supports business continuity, and frankly, that ability to quickly stand up a clean, known good environment is also a powerful defense against things like ransomware. It's not just efficiency, it's strategic resilience.
So wrapping this up, it feels like cloud repatriation isn't some mass exodus from the cloud. It's more a sign of maturity, maybe. IT departments treating infrastructure like a managed portfolio. It's not a one-time choice, but this ongoing process of reviewing where each workload runs best based on cost, performance control, and all those regulatory factors we talked about, optimizing the total cost of ownership, the TCO over the long haul.
I think that's a great way to put it. Disciplined portfolio management. And that long-term view, that need for discipline, it's being reinforced, even mandated by regulators globally. Which leads to, I think, a really important question for you, the listener, to consider. If your organization relies on the cloud for critical functions, especially if you're in a regulated sector, have you actually rehearsed your exit plan? Is proving you can leave, proving that reversibility becoming a standard, necessary, maybe even mandatory IT drill? Because increasingly it seems like just having the plan on paper isn't enough. You need to show it works in practice. That reversibility has to be baked into your architecture from the start.